about to join Don Neuen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an Intel Analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Neuen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Neuen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Neuen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Hello.
What's up, Niecy?
You.
That's right, me. And I'm Don Neuen, ladies and gentlemen. Let me be the first to welcome you to tonight's absolutely riveting episode of the Drive Time SITREP with the ever-stellar Denise Simon on one end of this conversation. And as I stated earlier, I'm Don Neuen, and I'm on the other end of this conversation. Denise, it is a rainy night in Georgia. It's been a rainy 3 or 4 nights in Georgia. The water table has got to be floating at this point up here. Thank God we don't have snow yet, but it's a rainy night in Georgia, and so you may hear my windshield wipers because I am making my way home after a grueling day at the office, and I've called into my budette from another daddy, Denise Simon, for a SITREP. What's up, Niecy?
Everything is up.
I got to tell you, I was not in a real cheerful mood this weekend.
Me
and I
neither.
I don't know if it's because I had to work outside so much and it was crap weather, cold and wet, or if it was the state of the union, or maybe a combination of the two. But why don't you timestamp it and do your best to do 2 things. Give us an update and end the night with a ray of sunshine. How's that for a challenge?
Uh-oh. Well, it's 8:02 p.m. Eastern time. Whatever time that is, I don't know, but it's just Eastern something. On the 10th of December, in the year of our Lord, 2018.
Very good. Very somber sounding, Denise.
Okay.
That's not a good sign. Not a good sign. I got a feeling tonight's going to be some bad news.
It is.
Well, I'm guessing we're going to hang out a little bit in Trump world.
Actually, let's start off in Paris, shall we?
Oh, Paris is on fire.
Oh, boy, is it. And our little Monsieur Macron gave a talk today.
Is he the 18% approval rate guy?
Yeah. Does he have that?
Yes. I've heard it's in the teens.
It was I got to tell you, the expression on his face almost looked as though he was in a courtroom making his closing argument for why he's not guilty. It was a pathetic performance. I mean, pathetic. And I'm really very sensitive. I understand your anger. We can't do violence because of anger, blah, 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 blah. I'm working with all the mayors. They are part of this conversation, but none of the yellow vests were part of the conversation. Anyway, we'll see if we can't raise the minimum wage. That's the cure.
Oh, really?
In the meantime, 2,000 people have been arrested. It's over $1 billion in damage. $1 billion in damage. And they haven't even calculated how much it has cost economically.
Yeah, they're like shutting down the whole country, aren't they?
Yeah, and then this is a movement that it began on Facebook, and it has moved to Belgium, Netherlands, and Canada. Now, Canada is nonviolent. Belgium's pretty violent. And Netherlands is getting there. So I have a sense that next weekend, because, these people, they're earning $60,000 a year, but they're taxed at a 60% rate. So,
yeah.
Okay. But here's the interesting thing that nobody's really asking. When it comes to this fuel tax that he's imposed under the guise of having to pay for climate change and green energy and blah, 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 I would probably argue that's not where the money's going. I think France is suffering under the burden of entitlements and socialism.
Yeah.
And I have a sense that that's really, I would say to any French that are out there, if you're listening, you need to ask some harder questions, because I think the country is using a gas tax that everybody has to pay so they can fund entitlement programs. That's what I think is really happening here.
Well, it sounds like, and while I most certainly do not condone the violence and the destruction that's taking place, it appears, Denise Simon, that we have Cloward Piven being realized in France. Do you agree with me on that?
I don't necessarily think so, because now the French intelligence has opened an investigation because they have found at least 200 websites that point back to some Russian trolls that are also fueling this thing.
Well, that's not surprising. Is it coming from St. Petersburg in the 4-story building?
Well, that apparently has been shut down a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but they've had to build another one.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a fascinating paradigm right there, that Russia is not going to stop.
Yeah, but the thing is, if France is becoming so bloated with regard to the entitlement program, that fits the Cloward Piven MO, does it not?
Well, I mean, it can, but
the middle class is collapsing within itself.
Well, here's the interesting thing. You have to look at the European Union as a whole, because the laws of the countries in Europe are not by country. They're under the Union, which is the reason that Theresa May has marched her little butt over to the European Court, which, by the way, ruled that they can shut down Brexit at any time. And she's over there trying to sell her Brexit plan. That ain't going to work either. And then you got the prime minister or president or whatever he is of Italy, who's new, by the way. He is slamming Macron too. Now, the IMF is expecting to have yet another bailout budget proposal from Greece. Remember all that a couple of years ago. So I would say watch very carefully what is happening here. And I would also add, and make sure that the listeners hear this, isn't it fascinating that our domestic media is not saying really too much? They're just reporting on what is happening in France, but they're also not really addressing the yellow vests, because what these yellow vests are doing in Belgium, France, Netherlands, and Canada is really flying in the face of their government, which says we need to start protecting ourselves, our own country. Now, that goes right back to that little old word that has suddenly left the headlines. And what is that word? Nationalism.
Nationalism, exactly.
Isn't that interesting? Nobody in media is accusing those yellow vests of nationalism.
Yep. Well, hey, the upside is this. It's Monday. We've got Monday through probably Friday, early afternoon, before this is going to get bad again, because all the yellow vests are busy working, trying to pay their 60% tax rates on a $60,000 a year income. So that's there probably will have a few days of less violence, don't you think? Unless you've got, millennials over there that aren't working, that are trying to stir the pot.
Well, maybe John Kerry needs to run on over there with James Taylor again.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the poor French have really put up with a lot when you think about it. So I would say that this yellow vest thing isn't just over the fuel tax. I think that was probably the cherry on the banana split, but it isn't just about that.
So, in short, what is Mr. 18% approval ratings solution to the problem? Simply raising the minimum wage?
Yep.
How's he proposing to fund that?
Exactly. Now, what is pretty interesting is he has not even spoken about the number of corporations that have said, we're out of here, and that have moved their corporate headquarters out of France. They're finished with it.
I bet it's like flushing a toilet.
Well, I would just say that how many countries seem to be in this kind of turmoil? We saw it early on in Cuba, and Cuba squashes it. We've seen many, many riots in Russia, but what does Putin do? He brings in the police and just arrests everybody and beats the hell out of them.
Right.
We've seen it in Venezuela. They're having a complete labor drain in Central America, and they're all in Mexico right now earning $75 an hour. That caravan is down to about 1,000 people. Some have just turned around and went home. And now you have France. It's manifesting to Belgium. And I would argue, keep a close eye on Germany.
Yeah, that's a very troubled country as well.
And if this thing with Brexit doesn't happen, if this thing with Brexit doesn't happen, Theresa May's finished.
Oh yeah. What's the extent of these protests in Canada, and where are they taking place?
Calgary. It wasn't very many, but France wasn't either on the first weekend, which is now where I think we're into the fourth or fifth weekend in France. So this was the first one in Calgary, and I think there were a couple of hundred. But you just watched that one too.
And France is at over $1 billion in damages?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot. I mean, they have they've broken windows, they've raided businesses, including the Apple stores. They have defaced the Arc de Triomphe. I don't know about, the Eiffel Tower, but burning cars.
You know what's really sad about that? And while I feel they have a legitimate gripe and a legitimate reason to be protesting, I would like to not expect that kind of destructive behavior out of the middle class.
Well, here's the deal. I would hope it wouldn't have gotten to this either, but Macron has let this go on for the fourth or fifth week, and he's really been missing in action. They're literally saying that. Yep. And so what did they need to do to really get his attention? And that's where we are. This is a Tahrir Square that's really developing here, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Well, hey, you push good people, they're going to do bad things.
Not all the friends. There's lots of them that say they're chanting, we want Donald Trump.
Yeah.
They're not saying
every time I hear that.
And they're not saying Nancy Pelosi, and they're not saying Bernie Sanders, and they're not saying Hillary Clinton. No. And that's why the media just can't seem to say this is a nationalist movement. It's
Yeah. Wow.
It's bad.
I didn't know they were up to $1 billion.
I didn't either until today. I didn't realize that. I've seen some videos that are clearly not played on media, but you really have to go see what those poor journalists are doing. I saw a video of a journalist in Brussels, He was just reporting on it, and the police in Brussels went after him. Several of them went after him with tear gas. A journalist.
Yeah.
Water cannons.
What was he wearing?
He wasn't wearing anything.
Yeah.
So,
hey, Merry Christmas to you, Denise.
Merry Christmas to you.
You know, now that we're able to say that, I'm just milking it for everything I can get. How about you?
I always said it. To hell with everybody.
Well, I always said it too, but now it's like encouraged. We're being encouraged to say it.
Okay.
And so, you know, I'm just saying, I'll say that for Cinco de Mayo, I'm going to wish people Merry Christmas. April Fool's Day, St. Patrick's Day, I'm wishing people Merry Christmas year round. How about you?
I don't know so much about year round, but.
Oh, come on. The girl with like 14 Christmas trees in her house?
I have 5 up and 4.5 are ready.
Well, there you go. So you got a half a tree to go. You've made headway.
I have.
So, hey, you know, on a side note here, and not to bore our beloved listeners, so Donna and I decorated the house this weekend. Okay, we had a lot of rain, so we decided to decorate the house. And we decided we were going to string multicolored lights along the entire porch, covered deck that we have, you know, that wraps around the house. So take a guess at how many bulbs I've got, Denise, that are going around the house. And this is not, I'm not repeating like a string. It's from one end to the other.
Hanging on the gutters?
Well, I've got it actually hanging on the roof line of the deck.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many lights you use? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
2,000.
No. I got a big deck, but not that big. These are big bulbs. I don't use the little ones.
Oh, the big boys. The big old-fashioned ones?
Yeah. But they're LEDs. They just look like old-fashioned bulbs.
600.
Exactly. 4 strands that are 50 feet long that have 150 bulbs in each one.
Okay.
Exactly 600. I am very impressed with your guess.
All right. Good.
Denise.
Yes, sir.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you and Merry Christmas to the listeners.
That's right. We're going to say this over and over. So, Denise, we got about 6 minutes before we have to go to that dreaded bottom of the hour break. You want to finish up anything with 18% man? 18% man.
Well,
or do you, wasn't there a song? 60 second man, 60 minute man, 18% man. Wasn't there a song like that?
No, I missed that one.
Oh, come on. You're old enough to remember this.
No.
Okay. Donna will know it. she knows the B-sides to all the records. It's amazing. All right. So we got like 5 minutes now. What do you think? What should we? Denise.
What?
On a serious note, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right,
so,
5 minutes.
Okay, well, in 5 minutes, we'll talk about Jerry Nadler and Adam Schiff, shall we? James Comey. All 3 of those characters are telling the world that, Trump is the target. Get him out of office at any cost, including the fact that once Trump leaves the presidency, he will be indicted for campaign finance violations because he paid off Stormy Daniels and the other woman, the Playboy model. Now, I would say this is the beginning of the Scud missiles, the legal Scud missiles that are going to be coming our way in January. And I hope that this White House is spending some real time figuring out who they're going to have next as a chief of staff. In fact, I think he needs at least a half a dozen chiefs of staff. I also believe that he's going to have to look harder in expanding the White House legal counsel's office because he's going to need some pit bulls over there. So I think that this White House is in, for sure, a little bit of turmoil. Now, the big question is, who's he going to choose for chief of staff? So far, all the names that I have heard, I'm not happy with.
Neither am I.
And a name came to me today that I thought just might be perfect, and that is Darrell Issa.
That would be awesome.
He's out of a job in January. He was chairman of the Oversight Committee. He's been at this long enough that he knows where all the bodies are buried. He knows all the cases that were sitting on desks of the Oversight Committee that either had hearings or didn't have hearings. He's pretty savvy. And I thought, instead of taking Mark Meadows out of the head of the Freedom Caucus, that we'd have to go through some election if he puts Mark Meadows in there, such that the Democrats might take another seat. Let's leave Mark Meadows where he is, and let's go to somebody that we don't have to replace in some other kind of emergency election.
Now, you don't have to have an MBA to figure this stuff out. You and I have been talking about this for months and months and months and months and months. You don't create a void. And that's the first thing I thought of when Meadows' name popped up.
Correct.
Why would you do that? Didn't you learn?
Exactly.
Now, where did you hear this about Issa, and is that a real possibility?
No, that's only a Denise thought. That's a nobody else thought. That's exclusively Denise.
Well, blast that all over social media, please.
And if that doesn't work out, another one that might be kind of interesting would be Mark Thiessen.
I don't even know who that is.
He is, he was George W. Bush's speechwriter. And he is over there. He's a big contributor to Fox. He's been on the panel, the 6 o'clock panel, often.
I don't ever get to watch that.
He's written a book that was a fascinating read. He knows about the system because he was in the George Bush White House, really at the worst time in our history after 9/11. He knows the legislative nonsense because of what Bush had to go through legislatively in order to do what he wanted to do in so many things, including the Patriot Act that everybody still hates. And then, going to war, going to Afghanistan, all those kinds of things. He went through one of the worst times in our history, which I think is not to say that Thiessen would take the job, but if
hold on a second. Is that name, and we got to go to break right now, is that name another one of your submissions? Okay.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Drive Time SITREP with Denise Simon. My name is Don Neuen. We've got to take a short 3-minute break here at the bottom of the hour. When we get back, we're going to have more. But before we go, I will leave you and Denise with a very Merry Christmas to you all. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Ron Phillips, and I'm the owner and operations manager of Talk America Radio. It is with great pride that I offer you this 24/7 stream of some of the finest talk radio programming in the country, but I need your support. We are a listener-supported network. That means we need your help to continue to offer the quality programming you're hearing right now. If you're able, please visit talkamericaradio.us and click the Support Us button. Your donation will go a long way in helping us continue to share the American voice. Thank you.
This is Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience. When I'm not debating with Donna Fiducia about politics, I listen to Cowboy Logic Radio. Why, you ask? Because outside of my blog, founderscode.com, and my own radio show, the Denise Simon Experience, Cowboy Logic is by far the most entertaining and informative radio show on planet Earth. Plus, Don makes me feel guilty if I don't listen to his radio show every week.
Hi, this is Donna Fiducia, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio. For 28 years, I was in the mainstream media, most recently as an anchor at the Fox News Channel. No more. Ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has completely failed the American people. Radio networks like Talk America Radio will not fail you. Radio shows like Cowboy Logic Radio will not fail you. Check out the entire roster of over 60 weekly radio shows by visiting talkamericaradio.us. That's talkamericaradio.us.
TalkAmericaRadio.us.
This is Denise Simon. 18 hours a day, I live in a world as an intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. What I find is reprehensible. What I find is terrifying. What I find is treasonous. 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 The mainstream media has completely failed the American people. 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 Join me for the Denise Simon Experience every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Ladies and gentlemen, to the Drive Time SITREP. Let me first start off by parlaying on what I left you with before we went to break, and that is I would like to wish each and every one of you a very Merry Christmas. How about you, Denise Simon?
Indeed so. Merry Christmas. Jingle bells and ho, ho, ho.
We are going to say this so much that we are going to turn atheists and liberals into melting head problems. How about that, Denise?
Okay. Jeez.
All right. So this is the longer of the two segments. Where are we picking up with this chief of staff situation again?
Yeah. The names are Whitaker, who is the acting attorney general, that he's not going to be the attorney general. He's just acting in that role. That's a possibility. Mick Mulvaney is a possibility. So none of those names excite me. I do want somebody that, could trot back on over to Congress if they needed to and knock on a few doors and butt up against a few heads over there. Dyson knows where the bodies are buried all over.
Well, and the chief of staff, based on what little I've been hearing about this position of late, really needs to be a politically savvy individual. And I think that's been missing, don't you?
Well, what John Kelly brought was structure and timelines and discipline, or at least he attempted to. And we know for a fact that that's not what this White House was. I mean, people were just coming in and out and going here and in this office and that office and hanging out there all day long. And he was like, no. We're not going to have cell phones over here. You're going to check in over here. You're going to have an escort over there. If you're not on the calendar, you go sit over there until we figure out what to do with you. And there was a lot of discussions where John Kelly had to apparently put Trump in the corner and just say, sit over there and be quiet, and you need to, hear some things out. And I think in the past couple of months, they were really beginning to lock some horns. I'm kind of disappointed that he's going, to be honest with you, because I still think that this White House needs some real structure.
Well, most certainly I agree with you on that. But I think he's going into a situation that politically is potentially devastating, and he's got to have somebody that can work the political angle of this whole thing.
And speaking of that, because of what I think that they're going to go after Trump for in a big, huge way, when it comes to campaign finance or some of these other types of perimeter subpoenas that I think they're going to issue, Darrell Issa would be a good one, because he could turn around and say, hey, you Democrats, you want to go down this path? Well, we're going to take a lot of you guys with us. And let me just mention a few, shall we? The first one that comes to mind is Maxine Waters. She clearly has got problems with campaign finance and political action committees, and her daughter. Then we have this Pramila Jayapal, the congresswoman, who's decided that she didn't care what her oath was, that she was going to embed herself with the caravan, and she was going to aid and comfort and mentor the members of the caravan. I mean, she's clearly not a congressperson. She's an activist, as is Kirsten Gillibrand, but she's another story. And as long as you're going to take some people with you, let's go after John Kerry. Isn't he practicing some foreign policy stuff in spite of this White House or State Department? Yes. But maybe we should look at also, too, Robert Menendez and his corruption trial. And what was he doing? He was accused, and they didn't try him for this one, but maybe we should revisit it. Remember, he was getting payoffs with this doctor person down there in whatever island it was, and having sex with underage girls. And while we're at it, we could add in Dianne Feinstein, because remember, she had a couple of Chinese spies working for her. But then we've got at least 2 other Congress people that are still on the payroll that our little sexual harassment slush fund had to make some payoffs with, and they're still on the payroll. Congressman Bobby Scott of Virginia, and then there's Reuben Kihuen, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, of Nevada. So Darrell Issa may know more than I've just come up with there, of a half a dozen or so.
Well, I would say he does. The problem is, right this second, you, me, and our beloved listeners are at least the only people that we're aware of that's throwing Issa's name around. And I think it's a fantastic idea.
Thank you very much.
The thing is,
I'll be here all week.
Yeah, I know you will. But we need to get you and me and our beloved listeners to blast social media with this idea, because nobody's talking about it.
And Darrell Issa does need the money. He's one of the richest ones in Congress, and he's out of a job in Congress come January.
But he's loaded.
Exactly, he's loaded, and he made the money legitimately prior to going into Congress.
Yep. What a great idea. Come on, Trump. Listen to Simon. Hey,
well,
Denise.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Unrelated. Merry Christmas to you, Denise.
All right,
what's
so
next?
Let's trot on over to China, shall we?
Yeah, we shall. We go where you lead.
We have a very nasty situation here. We have this woman, Meng Wanzhou, who is the chief financial officer or top dog at Huawei. Now, Huawei, interestingly enough, I'm really just kind of stunned that it has become such a testy topic in corporation, because I remember watching a 60-minute thing or 2020 at least 10 years ago about what Huawei was doing to the United States with their espionage and their corruption. Now, little Miss Wang Zhou was in court today. She was given no bail, so they ain't letting her go. And she's in jail in Canada at the behest of the United States, by the way. She has a home in Vancouver. She was on her way to Mexico when she got detained and then put in jail. She was avoiding the United States altogether. She was going to travel directly from Vancouver to Mexico City. She has a son in school in Boston that he has to visit her. She can't visit him because she won't set foot in the United States. Now, the reason this is all going on is because Huawei was taking some technologies that we had jointly developed and was selling those technologies to Iran in violation of our sanctions. Now, she was doing it with a company called Skycom. I don't know too much yet about Skycom.
Hold on, let me ask you a question about that. Was she in violation of Trump's sanctions?
No, just sanctions.
Okay. All right. So this has been going on for quite a while.
Yes.
All right.
And we didn't have to do a lot of convincing to Canada either, by the way, because China, Huawei, and Skycom had actually been doing to Canada what they've been doing to the United States. So Canada is not exempt from Chinese espionage and theft, technology theft. Now, little Miss Meng Wanzhou's father actually started the company of Huawei. He was a colonel in the People's Liberation Army in China. And all those yummy things that they have been stealing and hacking and all those things from the United States, he was passing off to the Ministry of State Security, which is their intelligence wing, and to their technology wing, but most of all to their military. So we have a nasty situation here that China is going to have to make some decisions, and the United States is going to have to make some decisions. And I would argue that while these trade wars are going on between the United States and China, and they're hurting for sure some of our agricultural industry and our farmers, that we need to be telling manufacturers and the farmers in the agricultural wing, start replacing that business, start moving it someplace else. So if in fact Central America seems to be a problem, like Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, I would say let's get the business out of China. Let's find the exit clauses in the contracts and have whatever U.S. manufacturers are doing business in and around China and move it to Central America. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Again, something that we've been discussing
for quite some time
now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the other interesting thing is China all of a sudden ain't helping us with North Korea. Have you figured that one out?
Yeah, it's crickets.
Exactly. And while on paper, China and Russia are not supposed to like each other, they cooperate and commiserate and collude and all of that all the time. So I would say that if I really need to write an article here with what is really going on with China. In fact, it's so big, and it's so cumbersome, and it's been going on for so long that the drive time SITREP could probably go on for 4 or 5 hours in a full-blown explanation, because it's decades of this.
Do you know where, by the way, do you know if we did do the drive time SITREP for 4 or 5 hours, do you know where that would put me? Do you know where I'd be driving to?
I give up where?
I could probably get to Destin, Florida.
Yeah, probably.
Just a little nugget. Hey, Denise.
Merry Christmas.
That's right. Well,
now,
let me hold on. Let me throw something out to you with regard to China and all this stuff that's going down. One of the big concerns that Donna and I have is that with regard to China, unless we get somebody in the White House with even half the stones that Trump has, all they're going to do is wait this out. And that's a big concern. You know, they don't care about their people. So if their people get hurt from this, so be it. But my concern is that once Donald Trump is long gone, or not even so long gone, 2 years from now, 6 years from now, if we don't have a strong conservative in the White House, China's going back to exactly what they've always been doing, and they're going to pummel us again.
Well, it's not again. They're not going to stop. There's this big brouhaha about how the Saudis killed Jamal Khashoggi. And in my world, I don't care. But you've got these self-righteous people in government, especially, members of Congress, are going, we don't need to sell arms anymore to, Saudi Arabia because of, this murder, this botch rendition and murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Well, here's the deal. No country has any larger labor camps that are deadly labor camps than China. They are trying to exterminate every single Chinese Muslim, otherwise known as Uyghurs, and millions are dying, and nobody's really reporting that. We had the head of Interpol from France that trotted on over to China, and we don't know all the particulars, and I don't know them either. But 2, 3, maybe a month ago, 5 weeks ago now, he goes over to China and no one's heard from him since. Not one person. And his wife is like, hey, somebody tell me where my husband is. He was called over there and he's just gone. Now, I think he was a corrupt individual for sure. But what did China do with the man? So we're all worried about Jamal Khashoggi. What happened to the head of Interpol?
Exactly.
And so if we have China that is in such massive violation of human rights with what they're doing with Christians, they've got they're calling them re-education camps. They're prison camps. They're labor camps. And these people just go missing, and they're killing those that they think that were operatives that our CIA had hired over there, that they're gone. They just come up missing. That's a whole nother component. Doesn't our government say, hey, you're in such violation with human rights, we don't want our U.S. manufacturers doing business in, you see what I'm saying, in China? You see what I'm saying? I mean, There's such hypocrisy out of the whole thing. Now,
hey, hold on a second. What is Pompeo saying about this, all this?
I haven't heard a word. I think he's been sort of told that, hey, you just kind of leave China over here to the side unless you're dealing, it has something to do with North Korea, because the U.S. trade representatives, President Xi Jinping and the president, and blah, 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 will deal with the other components. But I'm not sure that those are getting dealt with the way they need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
So I've got this report here. It's 215 pages, and I haven't finished reading it yet, although it's going to take me a while because it is such a comprehensive, scary document that was a huge investigation was done, and then it was updated last month from the U.S. Trade Representative on what China has been doing to the United States at least for the last 10 years. 10 years. Technology transfers and theft and intellectual property and blah, 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 blah. And it's a terrifying document. But I've got this other one here that I've looked at from this fellow by the name of Nicholas Eftimides. Now, I had to look him up. Never heard of him. Doesn't mean anything. So I go all the way to the bottom of this thing, and this cat is interesting because he was a lecturer at Penn State University, Homeland Security program. He retired from a 34-year government career that included CIA, Department of State, and the Defense Intelligence Agency. So I'd say the guy's got a few credentials. But he made some real... He starts off this article by saying that he had given testimony 20 years ago before the Congressional Committee on China's Espionage. And he said, I left the members with what I thought was an ominous warning. Do something now or you'll be calling me back in 20 years screaming, my God, how did this happen? And he goes on to say, well, they never called me back. But if the FBI arrests are any indication, the problem has gotten worse, a lot worse. Because just 2 months ago, the Justice Department indicted 10 Chinese intelligence officers. And I could go on and on and on about what they're doing to the United States. And they're here in the country. These aren't the ones that are just doing things remotely out of Beijing or some other, or Guangzhou or Nanjing. They're here. And so he issued a 274-page document, which I'll find and probably read it over the Christmas holidays. Merry Christmas. And he lists 4 things in here that's really kind of interesting. He says, China has expanded its espionage efforts considerably over the last 20 years. Number 2, Chinese entities conducting espionage include government agencies, the military, state-owned enterprises, private companies, individuals, and select universities. Number 3, nearly half of China's espionage efforts target the U.S. military and space technologies. And then number 4 reads, covert action or foreign agents registration. Now, foreign agents registration is a big problem, but nobody... Anyway, it passed in 1938 and required that agents representing the interests of foreign powers in a political or quasi-political capacity must disclose their relationship with the foreign government and information about their activities and finances. Covert action is carrying out these activities without disclosure and is intended to create a political effect and conceal the identity or allow plausible deniability by the sponsor. So as you see, we have got at least 4 very broad areas on what China, with inside government and outside government agencies, are really proving. Don, I just don't believe that anybody is taking this matter, well, anybody in media is taking the matter of China as seriously as it needs to be taken, and is explaining it to we little people out here as we actually need to hear it. You agree?
I don't think that anyone in the media, I don't know whether if it's that they don't take it seriously or they haven't educated themselves and they refuse to educate themselves. I mean, you've got Gordon Chang coming on your show Thursday night.
Correct.
Outside of a handful of hosts on Fox, Gordon's word's not getting out. They don't have him on some of the other networks, and they don't have those kind of experts.
No, they don't. And even the viewers on Fox or people that are paying attention to those guests that they do have when they only get 2 questions, I would say are not doing some critical or strategic thinking to understand what U.S. corporations and our own federal government are really having to endure. And therein lies what I would say is probably one of the bigger problems that we have. You could probably go on the matter of discussing the threat by China to the United States for hours.
Oh, absolutely.
If you've got one guy who's written a report who's the U.S. Trade Representative, that's 215 pages, and then added more pages on an amendment to his report a month ago. And then you got people outside government now that have been in government, including the Defense Intelligence Agency and the CIA, and they testified 20 years ago and are saying, you better call me back because, hey, Congress, hey, Senate, hey, CIA or NSA. There's some piece parts here that are not merging that we need to hear.
Yeah, but let me ask you this, and we've only got about a minute and a half left. How much of it do you think is being squelched due to laziness and ignorance on the part of the mainstream media and Congress? And how much of it is being squelched and ignored because pockets are being lined heavily by the Chinese?
Well, if there's a number over 100%, I would use it.
Yeah.
Now, let's not forget, yes, because we know that we have got Chinese operatives here in the United States. They're embedded into corporations, into politicians, hello, Dianne Feinstein, into the Confucius Institutes, into our universities. They, any agriculture. I read a story over a year ago where the FBI was chasing a bunch of Chinese guys that were trying to steal whatever they could from farmers in the agriculture sector of freaking Kansas. Now, can you imagine FBI's, tracking a bunch of little Chinese spies in Kansas on a farm?
Hey, they're in Kansas, Toto. Hey, that about wraps it up.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas, everybody. We're saying it ad nauseum. Hey, Denise, we got to go home. Ladies and gentlemen, join us next week on the Drive Time SITREP. My name's Don Neuen. You've got Denise Simon on the other end of this call. Thanks so much for joining us. Denise, take us home.
Merry Christmas and God bless America.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.